Brandon Groce. And we are the Game Changers. Designers, creatives alike. We are in a world that runs on value. Our next designs will be the shiniest. Our next animation will be the most buttery. Ladies and gentlemen, Game Changers, let the games begin.
Howdy doody, everybody. Welcome to another actually, this is our first workshop for our community. So welcome, everybody. I'm sorry, I saw that I accidentally put today's, or really the date for this workshop for tomorrow on YouTube when it's supposed to be today. So for those of you who are here, you came at the right time, right place at the right time. So I'm super excited today. If you guys haven't already read on the screen or really the description as you guys have been waiting patiently, today we are going to be doing a workshop from Figma to a responsive website using EditorX. I'm super excited to really share this with you. And for those of you who want to follow along with us, if you've already signed up through our website, you guys probably already have the template to follow along with us. If you don't, I'll show you guys how to do that in just a second, but I also want to say welcome to all of you guys. I would love to know where you guys are coming from. Let us know in the chat if you guys came from ADP List, if you guys came from our community, from our newsletter. Let me know. Other than that, let's dive into what we're going to do today and also share for those of you who are not or who are kind of coming in just from the ether, how to join us. First off, let me give you guys a little bit of, let's just give you a taste of what we're actually working on today. Okay, so we are going to build this in Figma. I'm going to show you how I built it. Obviously, this is the template that I'm sharing with you all, but I'm going to kind of discuss how I built it. Pretty much it's very simple. I didn't auto layout everything. A lot of things are grouped. Basically, what I want to share with you guys today is you don't have to be super clean with your auto layouts to be able to export what you've designed in your artboards in Figma to EditorX using the EditorX plugin in Figma. So with that said, let me see. We got some questions in the chat. Will you be able to see this later? Yes, this will be here recorded for you guys 24/7. So you guys don't have to worry about being here the entire time. And plus, today's going to be really short because this is really easy. So you guys probably will get this straight away. And also feel free, as I am talking through this, feel free to ask questions. That's the important part of this, live learning. So for those of you who are just basically popping in, I want to share with you how to sign up for this. I'll put it in the live chat. So basically, I think the majority of you came through our newsletter. You guys signed up for the Figma to Design website workshop, and when you sign up, you get the link to the free Figma template. So I'll drop this in the live chat here so you guys can grab that. Okay, so with that being said, let's talk about what the output is. So yes, we have an artboard designed in Figma, but what does the output look like? You know, I've showed a little bit of some of what is to come for this workshop on Instagram, but if you haven't seen any of that, this is the actual site that we are going to really build today. Okay, this is the finished responsive site that we're gonna I'm gonna walk you through how to do. All right, and it's super easy. And by the way, for those who are curious on where I got the assets and whatnot for this website, as we all know, using Midjourney, ChatGPT to get content, I basically used ChatGPT for all of the headings, subheadings, and paragraphs in this website, and all of the assets were generated via Midjourney in our community Discord. So if you guys haven't joined our Discord, we have a AI generation channel that you guys basically are really, not just myself, but a lot of other people are using to generate some really great UI design inspiration. And so just to show you where I got the inspiration for the website, it is right here in this upper first quadrant. So that was the inspiration that I used, and you know, I basically rendered out a few more AI selections so here was the upscaled version, and so I cut out the shoe here, and then I also basically made some other versions here so that I could cut out in Photoshop and use in my Figma file. All right. So first off, I just want to say hey to all of the people who are popping in. So we have D. Bujantis, what's going on? We have Rebecca, what's happening? Anna, hello, how are you? We have Karen, what's happening? Glad to have you guys here. I'm super glad to see you guys in the chat, excited. And one thing I want to ask really quick. One thing that is super important for me to know while I'm going through this. Yes, I'm showing you guys how to do this, but as we do more of these things with the community, I want you guys to understand, because things in tech move so quickly, I'm moving away from videos and trying to do more workshop related things. So if you guys have questions while we're going through things, please feel free to drop that in the chat and I will add additional explanation to that. And if you have questions that are not related to this, feel free to also drop those and we'll leave some time towards the end. All I ask is, if you have a question, please type in the word question and then colon and then your question, so that I can actually see YouTube highlights the question for me, so I don't have to sift through all the questions. That would be awesome. Good to see you, Karish Lee. Glad to have you here. All right. So let's get started promptly. First thing and last thing I will say, if you guys want to have access to more of these events, definitely join our community. Links are down in the description for our Discord, so you guys can join more of these workshops on a weekly basis. All right. So let's dive back in. All right. So moving our Discord to the side, and I'm glad that you liked our little nice little slider. So let's kind of break down how this works, because yes, even if you guys have the template for this, I want you guys to understand how, if you were doing this by yourself, how this works, okay? So I'm just gonna go ahead and duplicate this, and I'm gonna break out everything, okay? So all of this stuff, if we actually look at the layers, so I have them grouped in a couple of things. So how this workshop is gonna go is gonna break down the Figma file so you guys understand how to kind of basically have your anatomy or your structure together so that it is in the best shape possible, so that when you do use the EditorX plugin, everything is in good shape. So we'll go through the anatomy of the Figma file, and then we'll basically jump into using the EditorX plugin and going from there. Okay. All right. So basically, if we jump into this in my layers, so we have my hero text, and how this is broken up, we're just going to open up this layer, and I wish I could zoom in here for you, but I'll read it out to you. So we have our heading, we have our subheading, also in an auto layouter, and we have our paragraph. So how I have this built out, so I'm gonna actually undo all of this so we can kind of do it together. So far we just have our heading, we have our subheading, which is actually another auto layouter, and I'm gonna ungroup that as well. Why it's in an auto layouter is because we have this line here, and also we have our paragraph. Now, one thing I want to specify to you, auto layout is important to a point, but not the end all be all. For example, you could upload all of this, and we might actually do that. I didn't think about it before, but out of curiosity, I would love to know if you guys want to see what happens when we don't use auto layout in EditorX, and what happens, and then when we actually put in auto layouter, what the outcome is. So let me know if you want to do that in the chat. Okay, so why I do all of this is it just helps EditorX understand, hey, this is how things are grouped, this is how we keep things together, and it makes things easier on the EditorX side of things. So for example, I'm actually going to dive into the real site here. So let's go to select site. So this is the exported version, or the exported Figma file, okay? I'm going to go to edit site. And I just want to show you how things are organized. Obviously, I'll show you guys step by step, but I want to show you why it's important here. Just like if you're handing off, imagine you're handing off a design file to another designer or just another developer, and you're like, hey, here's how things are organized. That's really what we're doing with EditorX. We're basically saying, hey, when we upload this thing, please keep these things together. All right. Let's see. I'm just checking the chat over here. We have a question, how to generate those images. So to generate the images that we have in here, it is through Midjourney. And like I mentioned before, we have an AI generation tool in our Discord, and you guys can check that in the link in the description. But basically, I think just also to keep time short, I'm going to share with you how the best way to do this and not go into the bad way to do it, because that's just going to take extra time and I think that'll be confusing. But if you guys have questions, we'll dive into it after the fact. So just to break down this, right? I'm trying to think, okay, EditorX wants to know how things are grouped, what's next to each other, and I want to help EditorX understand that using auto layouter or auto layout. So for example, the step into luxury and this line here. So what I'm going to do here is I am going to add auto layout, and I'm going to make sure that the step into luxury is on the left and the step or our line here is on the right. So basically, let's check our frame here. And I just want to make sure that essentially, I really don't have to do too much, guys. It's not a lot of thinking when it comes to the auto layout. So that's why I like this. Basically, I can just say, hey, just make sure that these things are next to each other in this, keep this relationship. They're next to each other. Great. Thank you, Figma. For this other stuff, all I have to do is I'm just going to select my header, this other subheading in this line, and my paragraph. And all I'm going to do is just hit auto layout and make sure that I have the spacing in between all the elements that I want. So 13 pixels between each element, our title, our subheading and line, and then our paragraph. So I'm just setting relationships so EditorX knows, hey, okay, we want these things to stay together. And even then, for example, like I have my shoe here that is actually grouped. It's not in an auto layouter. And I have my shadow. This is actually the shadow of the shoe. And this is the actual shoe here. So sometimes you don't even have to use the auto layouter. I like to use the auto layouter for a lot more complex things. For example, I want to keep the relationship of Luxor shoes, the subhead in the paragraph, and especially for this slider here, this is an auto layouter where I have really just a lot of things. Each shoe has somewhat of its own it also is in its own frame. It's not necessarily in an auto layouter. Some of them just have groups. They're basically just the shoe and the shadow. So to break this down, I just have 4 different shoes. I have a line in between them. And all I've done is I've put all of this. I don't even think I didn't even auto layout this. But all I'm trying to say is you don't have to be perfect for some things. The only reason you would try to use auto layout is to be like, hey, EditorX, I want a very specific relationship between these items. Please keep these things together with this distance between them. Thanks, great. For other things, like this shoe, that's why I want to kind of break this down. You don't have to be pixel perfect, because I know, and what I mean pixel perfect is you don't have to be like the auto layout master. I know there's a lot of people in Figma who like know how to like tweak the hell out of auto layouter. That's not me, and that's why I really like to that's why I really like this process. So if you guys have any questions, please feel free, or if you're confused, let me know as well. So answering some questions here. How long is this workshop for? It is an hour. The workshop itself is not going to be super long. It's probably going to be like 20 minutes, but the rest of the hour is for like questions, because this is for some people, this is kind of like a entry level to intermediate workshop, and a lot of people might have a lot of questions. For example, like, how does auto layout work? What is the difference between auto layout versus grouping things? And a lot of questions about EditorX. So I'm trying to keep this short, show you how simple it is, and then just jump into questions and work together to figure things out. Let's see. So question here, the traveling dumpling, what is auto layout like grouping? So grouping is a simple form of just saying, hey, I want to put these 2 things in a folder for organization. That's about it. So just to demonstrate this very quickly, so I'm going to use the text here. And this is, I'm going to use this as an example. So we're going to call this is our auto layouter. And this is, I'm going to make a duplicate called our group. And I'll explain this very quickly, because I do think that this is something fundamental, and it will be important for some of the people who are a little bit newer to the Figma platform. So what I'm going to do here is, this is our auto layouter. Okay, I'm going to switch this. I'm going to ungroup this, Okay, so it is all basically in a frame, or actually I didn't mean to put it in a frame. My bad. I am going to ungroup this. Let's see if I can ungroup it again. Okay, perfect. All right, so the difference between a group and an auto layouter. So I'm going to just hit Control G. Let me go back here as well. I missed some things. I'm going to ungroup this as well, or unframe this. Okay, so we have all individual items here. Okay, and I'm just going to group this. So I'm going to hold Shift and select all these elements, and I can right click and go to group selection or do Control G. Okay, the difference between this auto layout is I can actually set, again, we're talking about relationships. So you can set relationships and organization with auto layout. So for example, right now, if we look at this, auto layout says, please have everything to kind of like the left and also have a vertical layout. I can set this to be a horizontal layout, which some people like, obviously, this does not look good. It just threw everything. It went from everything being vertical to making everything horizontal. Okay. We also can dictate the space in between each element. Okay. So each element within the auto layouter, we have three things: heading, subheading, in the line, and paragraph. So we're able to dictate with the auto layouter how much space is in between that. And on top of that, I can also set and align all the content within the auto layouter using these little docking tools here. The only reason that this is not actually moving is because the width of the text container is 100% of the auto layout here. So there's a lot to explain. This is not an auto layout thing, but auto layout allows a little bit more control of the things within the group or that frame. Okay, so hopefully that was a little bit of an easy gloss over for auto layout versus group, but let's jump into how easy this is to the bridge from your Figma artboard to your Editor X. Okay, because I think we're probably like 18 minutes in. Okay, so this is how simple it is, especially if you've downloaded this template. All you have to do is go to the plugins in Figma, go to Editor X, hit run, and all you're going to do is you're going to hit get started. We already see all the typography styles, all the colors that we've chosen, all of our media, and we even have our shape, which I believe is our shadow. So I'm going to go ahead and export this to Editor X, and all it is asking me to do is asking me to get my Figma file URL. So all I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to go ahead and grab my Figma URL. Got to pull it in and I'll show you guys how I'm doing this as well. So basically, all I need to do, this is the same Figma file. All I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this URL. I'm going to hit copy, minimize, and I'm going to drop it right in here. And I'm going to go ahead and hit export. And now what I see on my end here is we have Editor X is loading. And the traveling dumpling anytime. I'm glad I gave you a little bit of a little bit of help with that. Okay. So basically Editor X is going to take our Figma file, and you know what? I might have actually used the wrong artboard. Yeah, I did. But it's okay. It should be fine. Okay, so it's going to ask, start turning your designs into an Editor X website. I'm going to hit create, and we get a nice little loading. It's going to take this is a very simple site. It's not going to take super long. It's probably going to start out a little slow and then immediately hit the 100. Mujahid is asking how to set up this awesome video. Nice tie, my friend. A lot of production. I'll just say that. A lot of production. Okay. And I did see Peter Kim had a question. What is the benefit between Editor X and Webflow? Peter, this is an excellent question. So I've used both. Okay. Now with Webflow, it's more so you kind of have to be a little bit of a pseudo developer to kind of build things quickly. Whereas in Editor X, while literally in this workshop, I'll show you how easy it is to literally just have a designer mind and be able to build things quickly. Okay, you don't have to think about like divs, things like that. You literally just have to think about, I want things to behave like this, animate like this, and that's it. So it's just, EditorX is a lot easier for me as a designer, as a creative, to be a little bit non-technical, to build a actual product online, versus where, you know, Webflow, the products are comparable. It's just like workflows, which is best for you. I believe EditorX is best for the non-technical designer, creative, where Webflow, I think, you know, you have to have a different brain for that, and the learning curve is a little bit different. Okay, but thank you for that question, Peter. All right, and if we want to dive deeper into that, we sure can. I think I really love having that conversation. It's not like which tool is better, it's which tool is better for you and your workflow and what you're used to. Okay, so everything is kind of put together. So like I said, we have, just like we had in our Figma, all of our text is really put together in here. We have our image inside of a container with both our shoe image and our shadow here. We have our slider here. We will have to do something different with our slider, but it's great that all of our content is in here. The only thing is we could animate this stuff, but we cannot, to actually make this a functioning slider, we have to actually bring in what is called a layouter, and I'll discuss that. So for those of you who probably brought this in maybe on your own and you already started jumping to tablet, and we're gonna have to actually change this. This is still a desktop thing. But if you guys switch to mobile, you guys might have started crying a little bit, and that's fine because there's very simple tweaks. It's, again, in EditorX, what we have to do is basically import the design and say, please have responsive behavior like this. And that's it. The fact is, we haven't given any constraints, any responsive, we haven't given any constraints to EditorX for it to understand how we want our website to morph. And that's really the only other step we have to do, other than importing our design and then also changing or bringing in an actual slider for our content. So what we're going to do here is we are going to go ahead and start. And for those of you who might have come in a little late, this is the final product that we will have at the end of the hour. Okay, it's fully responsive, not that much work. And working by myself and not talking, I can do this in 15 minutes. But I know there's going to be a lot of questions, a lot of going over some of the technical things, but that's what we're here for. Okay, so what's important here? Let's kind of dive into some of this stuff, because I know this is probably like an introduction to EditorX. A lot of things hitting you at once. All right. So I want to share with you how this is put together. So we have multiple sections here. So I'm going to kind of dissect this. So we have one section that is holding both our heading text, our subheading, our paragraph, our image here, and our slider here. We have another section that is holding simply this bottom portion here, which is it's just holding this paragraph, essentially. This paragraph and then this line. Now, one thing I do want to check here, so I'm going to go to my layers here. This section actually looks like it's empty. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is delete it. And I believe the only reason that is in there is because I might have changed some things when I was showing you guys stuff in Figma. But it's important to check to make sure all of the relationships, all the relationships that we've set in Figma have come across to EditorX. And even if they have not, we can make those changes in EditorX. It's pretty simple. So what I want to do next is I want to start making the constraints, okay? And before we actually do that, as I want to set a tablet viewport width. Right now we have 1920, which was pulled from Figma, but now we need to add a tablet breakpoint. And the only reason, usually EditorX does this automatically, but because we pulled this from Figma, it brought another breakpoint. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is really quickly is I'm going to jump to our other site and take a peek. I'm just going to grab the default tablet viewport and just apply it to our site. So I'm going to go here. Let's see. All right, so we have 1001 and up for our desktop. We have 751 to 1000. Okay, and I'm just gonna grab these numbers. So I'm gonna come in here, 3 dots. I'm gonna set this to 1000. Hit done, and that should fix everything else. So now the desktop is 1001 and up. Tablet is 751 pixels to 1000, and mobile is 321 pixels to 750. All right, so that should fix our different breakpoints that we're gonna make responsive. Now we can start making constraints, and this is what is really easy for creatives or just to understand, because EditorX runs off of grids. All right, and before I run my mouth, let me see. I'm checking the chat here real quick. I see some questions about Elementor as well. I'm not very versed in that, so I'm going to kind of steer around that as well. But I do have some friends who like that platform. It's not about what platform it's better. It's about your workflow. And I love the fact that I can go from Figma directly into my website building tool. Okay, so what we're going to do first is we are going to play with this this section here. Okay, so we have our text and we have our container with our shoes and our shadow. So I'm going to leave the shoes and the shadow alone. What I want to happen, because remember, if we go to tablet, right, things are side by side. We don't have enough space for that. And if we take a look at what we have, I'm going to go ahead and just bring our, where is our site here? I'm going to go ahead and bring this here so that we can look at how we're going to make this responsive. So our tablet view here, I'm going to minimize this and also minimize our Figma so we can focus. So our tablet view, this is what we're looking for. Whoopsies. Let me make this a little bit bigger. So we go from here to here, and then the shoe comes underneath. So that's what we're going to build right off the bat here. That's what we're going to focus on. So let's go ahead and do that. So to do that, I am going to create grids. So when I select this section here, I am going to go ahead and also, just for my memory's sake as well, I'm going to pull up the actual site here. I'm going to have these three all next to each other. Okay. Just for reference for me. Okay. So I'm going to place both the shoe and all this text in a container. All right. So I'm going to select this stack. And also another thing, I know I'm going to throw a lot at you guys today. EditorX is really smart and stacked my content. Some people really like to use stacks. For me, for more control, I like to use containers. I'm going to see if we can hold this within a stack, but I think it might cause us problems. So what I'm going to do for right now is I'm going to unstack this so all of our content is basically individualized. And what I'm going to do instead is I am going to hold shift, just like I would in all my design platforms, select all of this, and instead of stack, I'm going to go ahead and go to place in container, or Alt-C. Okay? And one thing, this is when we start getting the grids. This is how things are organized, okay, guys? And we can start to think about this as if they're almost auto layouters. So instead of 1 by 1, I'm going to set this to a 1 by 3. And what that means is that one container is now, it has 1 column, 3 rows. And each row, I'm going to put a piece of content. So in the top grid cell, I'm going to have our heading. In our second grid cell, we're going to have our step into luxury in our line. In our third grid cell, we're simply going to have our have it in our third grid cell. It's going to space it out a lot, but I'll show you guys how to remove that space. Now, I know you guys are going to have a lot of questions fundamentally about EditorX, and that's totally fine, but this is just an intro to give you guys a little bit of a taste of the capabilities, and also for you guys, an opportunity for you guys to join our community, because every Wednesday, and we're trying to every week, add in really just live workshops like this for about 1 to 2 hours to give you guys the fundamentals of EditorX. So this is just a high level look of the possibilities that you guys could do for yourselves as well. So if you're confused, that's great, come every week to get less and less confused. And also in our community, we have a great group of people who answer Q&A on a daily basis, including myself. So, all right, so we have our 3 rows, and all I'm going to do here, I'm going to make sure I'm clicking my container here. And as we can see here, I'm going to click these little, kind of these sidebars here. I know you guys can't see it, it's really tiny, but right now the height is set to 108. We don't want that. We want the math to be done for us, basically making those rows the size of the content within them. So I'm going to set all this to auto, and you'll see that all this space kind of snaps to the size of the text. So I'm going to go from 108 pixels. I'm going to click those dots, set it to auto. Perfect. I'm going to make sure that this is, I want to make sure that some of these height things are, there we go. We have there's some margin in here that kind of got pulled in. There was like negative 18 pixels. We pulled that out. So here, 108, we're going to go ahead and we are going to set this to auto. Okay. So now everything is kind of snapped. I don't like all this space in here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select this text here, and I'm going to go over into my inspector over here. But this is kind of just like, this is very much like any design tool. This is where you can work with your width. Like instead of like dragging things in the actual, what's it call it? Let's say instead of like actually dragging out things on the actual website, like if you wanted to actually set percentage widths, pixel widths, you actually want to get nitty gritty with the numbers, you can do that in the inspector. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select my Luxor shoes, and I'm going to get rid of some of this extraneous space here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my margins in my inspector. I scrolled all the way down, and I'm going to select this bottom here, and I'm going to do about negative 20 pixels. There we go. And we got rid of about 20 pixels of space here. I might do a little bit more. I might do like negative 25. All right. Now, that's a little bit better. But what I'm going to do here now, I might do 30. We'll do 30, negative 30. And I see the chat popping, so I'm going to take a peek after I do this. I'm going to take a peek at that in a second. So we've reduced all the space, but I'm going to add some space back. So I'm going to select my container that all the text is within. And I am going to do 2 things, actually. So these little border things that basically tell us the height of our containers, things like that. Whenever I see these, or basically these bars are shorter or longer than the actual container that we are editing, that means there are 2 different heights fighting. And so basically the heights for these were set, we set them to auto, but there's also this minimum height in our container that EditorX sometimes puts in automatically. I'm just going to set that to none. And now our bars on the side and the sides of the container, or the height of the container, is what we want. The second thing, I am going to just add in the gaps between our content, and we're going to set that to 15. So the gaps basically are the space in between each asset or element within our container. Okay, we're going to pause there. I'm going to look at the chat real quick, and I'm going to take a peek at what you guys are taking a peek at. All right, hold on. Let me see. All right. What are the limitations in order to ensure EditorX translates the design, size, naming structure, etc.? So this is actually, Sunja, this is a really good question. So I did not do anything really special with my Figma file. Literally, I opened up a MacBook Pro 16. I basically just opened up a desktop. I just made one of these. I made the Mac Pro 16-inch, frame, and I started designing in it. And basically, all I did from that is I just grouped my shoe and my layer. There was no naming convention. They actually had no name before I even started live streaming. This text, I still don't even think, like frame 7. It was very loose, so you don't have to. That's why I like this, because you can still be very loose. You don't have to like be like an auto layout master to do this. You kind of just like put what you want on your frame. Make sure, the only thing that you really have to make sure is the content that you want to have stay together. Either group that stuff or put it in a frame, or put it in a frame and make sure that has auto layout. So there's there's like 3 levels of this. To make sure things are together while it's going into Editor X using the plugin is make sure it's grouped. So I could have grouped all this stuff just like I did the photo and the image. Same thing with the slider. I just put all these shoes in with a shadow. I put some space or bar in between them. I added an arrow to the left and to the right, and I just grouped the entire thing. Okay. So there's a frame, or not grouped. I put this in a frame, and each shoe is also within a frame. I think the arrows are the only thing that are grouped. Okay. One thing I do want to mention: if you group images, they will come out as a full image in Editor X. So for example, these arrows, these vectors, I grouped them, okay, in Figma. In Editor X, they come out. I'm gonna go to my layers. They come out as one vector art piece, all right? So be careful what you group. So that's what, if anything having to do with text, make sure it's in a frame. Anything that you kind of want to smash together as an image, make sure those are grouped. But sometimes it's a little finicky. I think with vector arts, they kind of push them together. But for example, I grouped my image and my shadow in Figma, if we look here, and it did not group them together. So the fundamental thing is just make sure, the only thing you really need to remember is by grouping things or making an auto layout. Auto layout will kind of create a stack in Editor X, which is great, but we kind of undid the stack because I don't necessarily like the stack because I want more control, but some people want and like to use the stack in Editor X. So auto layout creates stacks in Editor X. Grouping things in Figma, just make sure that they are grouped in Editor X as well, just for organization purposes. And just keeping your layers consistent with what you built in Figma, consistent in Editor X. Hopefully that explains why you would want to do certain things. Basically, the only thing you need to know is, at a minimum, group the stuff that you want to keep together in Figma so it comes across nicely in Editor X. If you want to take it another layer deeper and you want to have like some stacks built in Editor X, make sure you're using auto layout in Figma rather than a group, and that way you kind of set a hierarchy and that will be translated into Editor X. So either group things at a minimum or set things to auto layout if you want to go that next step and have things automatically stacked in Editor X. Okay. All right. So now what we are going to do, so we have our text here. We have our image containers here, and what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to put our shoe and our text in one whole container, because now we're going to kind of set some behaviors. For desktop, I want things horizontal. For mobile, I want them to stack. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure I'm selecting this container here and this container here holding shift. And all I'm going to do is a place in container, just like this. Now from here, again, this is the constraint. So I'm going to, instead of having a 1 block container, I'm going to set this to be a 2 column, 1 row. And all I'm going to do here is I'm going to set the content over here, all of our text. I'm going to make sure that it stays in our left grid cell. In our image container here, I'm going to make sure it stays in the right hand contain or grid cell here. Now, just for reference, I'm going to come over here just to see and make sure. I think I might have done something a little bit more advanced here. So I kind of made sure that this container stretched actually both grid cells, and that's fine. Okay, we might actually try that over here as well. So we're gonna Control Z that and keep this here. But really, all that matters is making sure that once we actually switch to mobile or tablet, that the shoe goes from being on the side to being on the bottom. That's all that matters. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to select our tablet view here. And what I'm going to do here is that container that we made that is 2 columns and 1 row, we're going to actually switch it now. So we're going to switch this to be a 1x2. And what we're going to do is we're going to select this, our image or a shoe and shadow container, and I'm going to place this in our bottom grid here. Okay. Now a couple things did move over here. So we have our, let's go to my layers here. And so one thing I want to point out to you guys, things might look like they get messy when you start going to tablet and mobile, but literally all you have to do is basically just say, hey, this element that moved, please just go back into this grid cell that we had set up. And it's literally just moving things around. It's really, it looks complex, but it's really not. So we have this 2x1 container. Now what we need to do next is I need to move this whole, let's find it, this container here. So these are basically our shoes. Before we actually go to the tablet, we need to do one more thing. We need to, this container that we just made, perfect, it's great. We made it 2 columns, 1 row, easy. But what we need to do to make sure that this container that has our slider does not collide with this portion of the site is we need to make another constraint. So we need to make another grid. So to break down the hierarchy, okay, we have this one section. This one section holds this text, this image, and then also this slider. Okay, when I open this up, we see it here. There's 2 containers. There's this container. I'm just gonna title them. So we have our title plus shoe image. And also, guys, what I'll do after this as well is I will share this openly with you guys so you can actually go in and see how all of the grids and whatnot were made. And then we have our second container, which is our, I'm only naming these so you guys know what is what. This is our slider. Okay, so what we need to do is we need to take this section and make it not a 1x1, but we need to make it a 1x2. Okay, so that in the top part of the container, I'm going to go into my inspector. I only want our title and our shoe. Our slider, we only want in that bottom portion here. Easy day. Now, what we're focusing on here is just making constraints. We already have everything in editor from Figma into EditorX. Now we just need to make constraints, okay? So I'm going to select, we have these bars again, just like we did with our text. I'm going to click this bar, and we have all this extra space, just like we had with the text. And we have minimum height, 431 pixels. We don't want to do the math. So we're going to set this to auto, so it collapses to the exact height of that slider. Perfect. And we're going to do the exact same up here. So we're going to select this bar here that corresponds with this grid cell. And we are going to, instead of 431 pixels, we'll set this to auto. And it does not collapse because we actually have some margin on top of this container. So if you guys see this little dock here, we have this dock up top, and we've also set a margin of 117 pixels. I'm going to just set this to 100. Okay. All right. So now when we go back to tablet, you see I didn't touch this portion. It just moved itself because we've added some constraints. Now we have to continue to add constraints to the tablet to make sure it looks good. Okay. Now I'm going to pause really quick, look back at the chat, see if you guys what's going on, WixFix? What's happening, Ryan? I'm going to go through some of your guys' questions because I know I just went through a lot. Let's see. Find You says, when you take out margin, you're trying to find the blank space. Does that happen when you export design? Also, how much do you design in Figma versus EditorX? So, great question. I don't really design in EditorX. Sometimes I do, not in this case. All my design is here. I basically just have to all I have to do is say, hey, I want you to respond like this. I'm giving you constraints at this point. That's it. All the design is done. I don't have to do much else. All EditorX is really doing for me at this point, especially when I'm using Figma to design, is basically say, hey, we have all these assets, all these elements. Please just respond like this when a customer and audience member is looking at this site at particular viewpoints, or viewports rather. Let's see. Utoid says, wow, this is home. I need to catch up with everyone else's knowledge of what this is. Never used Figma or EditorX, so I'm all over these past videos. I'm glad you found home, and I hope you are also in our community Discord as well, my friend. Let's see. Does EditorX only work with Figma, or can it be used with other design tools like Adobe XD Sketch? So right now there is only a Figma plugin. Adobe XD is kind of out the door. But yeah, right now there's only this plugin for Figma. So I highly recommend. I actually switched to Figma purely because of this functionality and how we can make websites super easy. I'll show some of the other websites that we've been able to make with this. But yeah, Toyd Vignac had a great question. All right, looking through a couple of these. Adrian says, great to see the community growing. Keep it up. Hey, what's going on, Adrian? What's happening, man? All right, let's see. Peter Kim, I really wish between Figma and EditorX don't generate these extra dead spaces. Yeah, so Kim, that sometimes does happen. And this is how, Kim, or Peter, this is a great comment. So you can actually kill that space that EditorX creates. And this really depends on how good you actually are at Figma and Auto Layouter. So you have two choices to make, and I'm going to kind of switch here. So we have two choices to make when it comes to, where we want to spend our time. Do we want to spend time in Figma creating our design and then making it so tight, like using the Auto Layouter, making sure everything has a constraint, and everything is grouped? Do we want to spend time doing that in Figma, or do we want to spend time doing that in EditorX? Because if you tighten it up in Figma and then you export it, EditorX will be like, oh, this is the type of spacing that we need. But for me, I like to work loose, and I like working to what is going to actually happen on the web, because Figma only goes so far in terms of like responsivity. Like you can get the auto layout, things like that, and even if you tighten everything up in Figma and you export it, there might be some things here and there that you might need to tighten up in EditorX when it comes to responsivity. So I'd rather just get my layout, get my design, get my concept in Figma, hit a button, get all that in EditorX immediately, and then just start working on the constraints, pulling out some added margin that we didn't add, but is just a click and a delete away. So that's why I like this workflow, but I hear you. If it didn't do that, it would be perfect. Or if it, could take our design and again, this plugin is brand new, guys. This is probably like maybe 2 or 3 months old, and it's basically like in beta form, and for what it's actually capable of doing, it's pretty good. So let's go back. And Yinchun, the plugin is called EditorX. So if I go back to here, this is Figma. If I just go here and search in plugins, literally the plugin is called EditorX, and you can just run it. Okay, great questions, guys. All right, so let's go back to some of these constraints. So a couple things we have the constraints, but things look a little wonky now. So let's go ahead and fix this. So we have our container that we had we switched from, 2 columns. We switched it to 1 column in 2 rows. But now I want things to respond a little bit differently. So I'm going to go into this container. As we can see, the main container is we're going to set this to about 90% of our viewport width. And I want to make sure that this container that is holding all of our text, also, we're going to set this to 100%. Okay, so it matches the full width of the container it is within. Okay. Now all I'm going to do here is this container that is holding both our shoe and our shadow. I want to make sure that I remove, for some reason, it jumped to 495 pixels. We don't want that. We're going to set this to none. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this container that holds both the image and the shadow. And I can do that by just some quick tips here. I want to select this image, but I want to select the container this image is within. So I can select the image. We have some breadcrumbs here. I'm going to select the container. Perfect. And I'm going to left align it. Awesome. Now what we will do later is we're going to add another photo so that we can actually flip this. I wish I could flip the image using our design tab, but we actually can't. The only thing that we can do is, let's see, maybe we can flip it. We have rotate, scale, skew, translate, but there is no flip. So we're gonna have to do something a little bit extra there. We'll do that next. So that top section is looking good. What we need to do here is our layouter or our slider got a little small. So what we want to do here is we're going to select the container, or we're going to kind of inspect kind of what's going on here. So all these containers look way bigger than what is actually containing them. And I can see that there was some additional spacing, some additional height added to the containers. So I'm going to just set all these to none so that they conform to the actual images and content within them. All right, so we have that. Next, we're going to select this container. Again, way too big for our slider. So I'm going to go and look in my inspector here. Minimum height. Yep, don't want that. I'm going to set that to none. Now everything is confined. Perfect. Okay. So like I said, at this point in the game, we're not designing. We're basically just saying, hey, Editor X, we brought these assets in, and I want them to respond like this based on different breakpoints. So here we have 75% width of the viewport. We're going to actually set this to 90 so it matches exactly what we did up here. So 90, hit enter, perfect. Now, last thing, we see that this whole section here is longer than our two bars here, okay? Remember, like we said before, that means there's competing height data. And over here we have minimum height. We're going to set this to none. So now we're looking good. But you guys see how easy this is? At this point, we're not designing. We're taking away, we're adding constraints, telling Editor X how to make our design behave on breakpoints. And that we do that by using grids, adding space, taking away space via padding and margin. Yeah, no, Utoy, this is totally new stuff. So you're actually ahead of the game. Like, for those of you guys watching this, this is amazing. You know, that's why I wanted to show you guys this, because this is actually the team at Editor X told me because it is so new, they were like, please don't share this. But for those of you guys who came today and actually start to mess around with this, you will actually be able to grow as this new tool grows. So you guys are kind of like the first in seeing like the potential of this plugin and what it can do for you. You no longer really have to deal with developers. You can literally be like, yo, I'm making a dope design and I'm going to build it today. Okay. So we might go over on our time today, but like we actually are done, but I'll go not done. We have like 5 more minutes in terms of tweaks, but I'm just sharing with you guys. Most of my time is like talking and answering your guys' questions. Okay. So this last portion here, and I'm going to go back to desktop to fix this because we actually haven't touched this at all. So we're looking good here. I think maybe what I want to do is I want to add a little space between my text and my shoe here. So I'm going to select the container that holds both. And remember, I'm going to go back to our gaps so I can add about like 40 pixels between this text here and our shoe here. All right. Now what I'm going to go ahead and do from here, actually I'm going to go back to desktop because I want to add constraints here. I always like to start on desktop, add constraints that hold as you go down your breakpoints. If you start adding constraints like in the middle of like a tablet, if I start making constraints in tablet, they don't go up to desktop. If I start making constraints down in mobile, they don't go up to tablet and they don't go up to mobile. So I like to make all my constraints in desktop go down and tweak things in tablet, go down in mobile and tweak things. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to go ahead and grab both of these assets here. I'm going to hold shift. I have my I have a container here, and what I want to do, just like we did with the text on top, I'm going to do a 1x2. Okay, I'm going to make sure my heading is in the top portion of that grid cell, and I'm going to make sure my paragraph text is in the bottom. I'm going to do this really quickly. We've already done this a little bit earlier. I'm going to just make sure all that space is gone by setting the height of each row to be auto instead of a fixed pixel width. And again, if you guys have questions, I will be staying a little bit later to answer that. And also just remember, we have an amazing group of people in our Discord who answer any and every question about EditRx. And plus, we have weekly office hours to help you guys with what you're working on outside of EditRx, anything design related, but we also come together to help you guys with EditRx as well. I'm going to make, we'll say 10 pixels of a gap between the content in the top grid cell and the bottom. And the last thing I want to do is I'm going to grab this container. I'm going to hold shift and select this line. I'm actually going to I'm going to delete this line and add another line, and you'll see why. Sometimes with vertical lines, when they're imported, EditRx basically creates a horizontal line and then just rotates it. So if I select this here and we look at the rotation, it's actually set to 90, and it kind of messes up the math. So what I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to delete that, go to my add elements, and let me see, I'm going to go ahead and go to decorations, and I'm going to scroll down to vertical lines here, and I'm going to pull out a vertical line so it is a true vertical line, and I'm going to set the color to our gold. And all these colors were pulled from our Figma file, so that's awesome. I'm going to grab this. I'm just going to pull this to be the height that I want it. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold shift, grab this container by clicking on it, place in container. And now what I'm going to do to just make the relationship so that they always stay together is I'm going to set it I'm going to do a 2x1. Okay. I want the line that I have selected here, or I'll start with this container. I want this to be always in our right grid cell. And this line here, I always want in the right grid or the left grid cell. And so what I can do here is I simply can drag the grid cell here like this, right? So I can create the relationship manually, or I can use my inspector. So I'm going to grab my container here. I'm going to left align this here. And a couple things that I want to do is I'm going to set this to be, I can do a couple things. I can set the entire container to be about 30% of the entire viewport, or I can set it to a specific pixel width. We can play with that. But all I'm going to do is I'm going to pull, just manually pull this. The line here on the left does not need that much space. And another thing I can do is I could set a max width of this container. That could work. So this height I'm going to set to none. This minimum width I want to do, let's see, I'm going to take a couple things off. So we have some docking here that we don't need. So I'm just going to make it so that we have this dock to the left and to the top. And basically this docking here, sometimes when you have like double docking to the left and to the right, it makes it so that you can't actually control the max width. So I undock that. Max width is open, and I don't have to put any number. All I need to do is go to pixels, and it will take the actual width that this is, so that you don't have to like do some magical math and be like, I want it this size. So it will automatically take the width of what it is right now. In this container, instead of doing 30% width, I can now set this to max content. This width I'm going to set to, what happens if I do max content? There we go. Okay. All right. Now the only thing that I have to do here is I want to add that line that we have is getting lost a little bit. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to set this to auto, and I'm going to set this to about, I'm going to actually give this a pixel amount. I'm going to set this to about 30. So we have about 30 pixels between this line and the text here. Now, one of the things that I want to do is this line, I don't want it to have a very specific, I don't want it to have a very specific height. Right now we have 138 pixels of height. I want it to actually grow with the text in this box. So if this text starts to stack or whatnot, or it starts to get shortened, I want the line to actually start to grow with it. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take this line, and this is kind of more like complex stuff. I'd actually planned to do this today. We might actually just leave it here for now. Let me just actually shorten it manually. So minimum height. Let's make sure I'm actually selecting our line here. We have our height. All right. I'll just set this to like 150 pixels for now. Or let's do 100 and just pull that to the top. 100, 110, 120. Okay. But there is a way to make it so that everything kind of responds to each other. It's a little bit more advanced, but we'll just keep it basic today. Okay, just so we can get to some of your guys' questions as well. I'm going to remove some of the height here from both the inspector and also our bar here. I'm going to set this to auto. There we go. All right, now let's start working on the rest of this. So tablet, we pretty much are done with. The only thing that I want to do here is I'm going to select this container, and I'm going to make sure the width we have at max content. I'm actually going to set this to, we can keep max content. All I'm going to do is I'm going to left align this, and I'm going to try to figure out what the, no, I'm going to do it like this. There's a million ways of doing this, but I want to set, instead of max content, I'm going to set this to 90%. And let's see, max width, we're going to set this to none. Minimum width, set this to none. And we are going to set this to, for right now, we're going to set this to 400 pixels. This width is 90%, please. Okay. Now, while I'm setting this to 90%, and I actually, let's just do it the simple way. Let's do it the simple way. Okay. All I literally have to do, minus the numbers. Let's not even mess with the numbers. All I have to do, if I want this aligned with our other content, I just have to drag it. And just like in any design platform, it's just like, all right, it's aligned. Great. And Editor X will kind of just, it already docks it for me to the left. And all I want to do is just dock it to the top. Keep it simple, guys. I'm sorry that I'm trying to like get into advanced stuff. Okay, so tablet is good. Now mobile, all we have to do is just, everything has the hierarchy. We just have to change sizing of text, and really that's about it. So let's just double check everything here. So tablet's looking good. I'm going to squeeze this a little bit. All right, so this responsively is working well. Or what was this? This was desktop. We still have some things to iron out here. So just like this, I don't like that this is like stepping over each other. So this container, I'm going to look at the settings. It's not going all the way to the edge here. Why? The width. I'm going to set that to 100. Perfect. Now, one thing that I can do to help the relationship between these two things, just like we've done before. If you don't like how the relationship is when you're starting to expand and contract the the viewport, all you got to do is, okay, let's add some more constraints or guidelines. Let's add some more grids. So I'm going to select this container here to 1 by 1, and I'm going to set it to 2 by 1 so that the step into luxury has its own space. The line has its own space. This text here, when I look over and see the width, I see it's grayed out. All right, what do we do when I see that? All right, that means that there's two sides docking. I don't need them both. I just want it to be docked to the left and to the top. So I'm going to come here. Now that our width is ungrayed, we're going to set this to 100%. Perfect. And we are also going to grab this line here. I'm going to dock it to the right. I'm going to set this to 100%. Okay. And now we're going to start playing with what's going on here. So now we're going to play with scaling text. All right. So I don't like all the space that is in between the Luxor and the shoes. So I'm going to come over to my inspector here, my design tab, and I am going to mess with the spacing. So right now I'm going to set this to 1. It's good. I'm going to come in here. I'm going to select this text. I'm going to go to, we're still in the design tab in the inspector. We're going to look at size. And right now we are at font size 26. I'm going to hit scale text. And now I can set a max font size, which is 26. And we can set a minimum max size or font size. And I'm going to just set this to 14. Okay. Now for this, I'm going to select this text and I'm going to make sure that I'm going to go back to my layout. And instead of 100%, I'm going to set this to max content. What max content does for text is basically just say, take all this text and put it on one line. Okay. It kind of brute forces the one line here. So what I'm going to do is we have this one line, step into luxury. And what I'm going to do here is I am going to make sure that all this stuff kind of collapses. We have all this extra space. So we're going to go into our little side widget here that gives the height to this section. And instead of a 74 pixel, we're going to set to auto. Perfect. All right, so we're starting to get that relationship now. We have that straight subheadlining and we have this text, or this, we have that straight line here. What I'm going to add here now is a gap, okay? So I am going to select the container all this is within. I'm going to go to gaps and I'm just going to add a 15 pixel gap. And what you guys can see is this line will actually respond to the, it will actually expand and contract. So let's take a look at this. And we have some mobile we haven't touched yet, but here, like as you guys can see, it expands and contracts. Now let's fix some of the spacing between all this content here. All right, so we're going to go back to our, right now I'm kind of between like troubleshooting and also just making sure all the relationships are exactly what I want. So I like the space here. Okay. Let's go here. Not really digging the space. Let's make sure that this line, again, it has some docking to it. So all we need to make sure is giving it the proper way that we want it to respond. And also, I think you guys dropped in some great questions. So I'm gonna look over and answer some of your guys' questions as well. So all I need to do to fix this is I'm gonna jump over to my alignment tools, just like in any regular design tool. I'm gonna center it, easy day. Here, all I'm gonna do is we have max content. I'm gonna set this, I want this to be a little bit bigger. So on tablet, I'm going to increase the size here. And as you guys can see, I can, by the way we set up this container, the line will actually shrink without us doing any additional math, right? Okay, so I'm going to just put this to the size that I want. That looks good. This text here, I'm going to go ahead and set this to, 100%. Perfect. This shoe, we will get, we'll add another shoe that actually is reversed, so it's not facing that way. We're going to add some space between these two sections. I feel like they're a little too, we're going to add a gap in this container so it separates this shoe a little bit more from this slider. So right now we have no space, so we're going to select this container, go to our inspector, go to gaps, and I'm going to do about 25 pixels. All right, I'm gonna pause. I'm looking over the chat. Let's see. Hey, what's going on? Wait, Cara Butler. I'm like, is that Kara from Geico? Is that Kara from our community? Let's see. Let's see, Kim. Hey, Brandon, I asked this question earlier, but I was wondering if you can export the tablet or mobile view from Figma to Editor X. Great question, Peter. So I think this is stuff that they're still working on. Like I said, this plugin is still like 2 to 3 months, very early. They haven't even done like an official announcement about it. The plan and what makes sense is to be able to pull in mobile and tablet views from Figma. But I can't say whether it makes sense to do that. Do I know whether or not and at what time they will actually be implementing that? Have no idea. But I work very closely with them. The product team give feedback. All of the people that give feedback in our community, we work closely with them, so we always give back feedback. And that feature I have been asking them about for quite a while. So they did not say no, and it would make sense for them to do it. So great question. Like I said, really, really early. Oh, Kara, that's what I thought. I was like, Adobe XD community. There we go. I was like, that name looks very familiar. Let's see here. I'm glad, Yunshin, that it's become clear. What's going on, Nina? What's up? Kara, I was like, Kara, hold on. Okay, so we have all our space here. This is looking pretty good, and it's responding pretty nicely. All right. And if I wanted, I could, like for example, like this line gets way too big, I can come back to this container and I can set specific parameters. Like I could set this to auto, so that this basically, or this side of the container grows with the text, and the line will actually, I don't know how to explain this. Basically, I'm saying, hey, left side of this container, be the same size as the width of this text. And on the other side, where it says F1, which is basically a fraction, I'm saying, hey, this container, this whole container is 100% of the main container it's within. So if the left side is taking the width of the text, hey, line, take up the rest of the space. So as the text, or as our step into luxury scales and decreases in size, the line will actually not only scale, but continue to fill in the rest of the space that needs to be filled in the container. Okay, so we have our tablet. Let's go to mobile. This is our last bit. And see, we don't have to change that much at this point. Maybe the only thing I'd want to change is like the size of this. So boom, go to my design tab, scale, text, minimum I want is maybe 14 pixels, and the max of the text maybe 18 here. Or maybe we'll do 20, something like that. Okay, luxury shoes, step into luxury. Excellent. Now what we want to do is our sliders become really tiny, and we still actually need to replace that. I'm leaving that for last because it's really simple. Okay, so what we're going to do here is we're going to remove the extra space here. Boom, and set that to auto. We're looking good. Slider is going to need more space, and with this text, all we need to change is because we had max width that has stuck with that was good for desktop, good for tablet, but is no bueno for mobile. All we're going to do is we're going to set the minimum width to none. We're going to set the max width to none, and we are going to brute force the container to actually be, let's see, minimum width. We're going to set this to be 250. Actually going to set it to here. So max width 250. Everything gets constrained here. All right, I'm going to set this to, I'm going to line this to the top here. Perfect. Now this section, what I want to do, because we're kind of losing a little bit of space here. So minimum height, we have 237. What I want, I'm going to actually set this to none, so everything is nice and squished. We're going to make additional space by using padding. So I'm going to do 50 pixels of padding at the top, 50 pixels of padding at the bottom. We have the additional space here. We're looking good. And the last thing I will do is I'll select this line and I'll have the height be, let's try 100%. Perfect. So now this line will fit the exact size of this text. And I see the text is kind of overflowing the container a little bit. So I'm going to select this container, max width. Let's do minimum width. Let's set this to 300. Oopsies. Let's set this to none. Oh, 1 second, guys. All right, so width, it's max content. We'll set this to pixels. Okay, none here, none here. The reason why that was overflowing is because when I set this to max content, this is the issue. I have no constraints on the text. It basically says 100%, please, or this text will be 100% of whatever the container is. And I set the container to be, what was it? I set it to be max content. And so what that does is it just makes the text all try to go on one line. So I actually have to brute force the width of the container here. So I'm going to set this to about 300. I'm going to set the pixel here for our line here. I'm going to set this to about 10 pixels. I'm going to set, oh, there must be another container in here that I didn't know about. Oh, there is, right, all right. I'm going to set this to 100. There's two containers. There's one for the text and one for to hold the line and the text together. So we have a little bit of overflow here. I'm going to do the same thing that we did to this text up here. I'm going to scale the text. I'm going to set the max to be 18 and the minimum to be 14. There we go. Awesome. So this is what we got, guys. We're looking pretty good. So this is so this is the smallest mobile. This is 320. So all to fix that is we're going to scale this text here as well. So we're going to set this to be, I'm going to undo that so I can see. We have 122. I'm going to set this to 110. And we'll set this to about 80. All right, let's try a little bit more. 90, 100. All right, this is looking good. All right. Okay. Now, what you guys see here is there's a little bit of overflow. And we don't want that. And that's happening because of our line. So what I'm going to do here, our line that's in this container. So what I'm going to do is I am going to select this layer, this container that is holding both our line and our step into luxury. And what I could do, let's see here. I'm going to check on a couple other things. Just make sure that there's no min or max width here. Okay. I'm going to set this to 90. Let's take a look here. Let's make sure things are docked correctly. I'm looking for the extra math. Oh, here it is. Okay, so step into luxury is what's happening. So I'm going to go to design and I'm going to scale this puppy down. All right, there we go. So now we shouldn't have any overflow. I'm still looking. We're here. All right, 14 to 20. All right, let me see if there is. Sorry, guys. This is some of the troubleshooting that we have to do sometimes. Okay, so this is still coming out. Let's see, 100%. This is 90. I think what I want to do here, let me continue to just drop the text size here. And same thing here. set this to 95. All right, we're still... All right, this is what I'm gonna do. I am going to... Because having that line still there is nice. But basically, just to kind of pause here, let me look at your guys' questions, and then I will explain kind of what happened here. Hey, what's going on, Obasi? You said this is really amazing. Finally, this is happening. I'm glad. I'm glad you're here too, man. All right, Depish, when you have time, check out my design. I would love to hear your thoughts on the design. My friend, will do. We've been super busy as of late, and yeah, man, I will definitely. If you have it in the Discord, I'll try to get to it when I can. And if you haven't already, we actually have portfolio reviews tomorrow with Jason Taunton, a creative director. So if you dropped your portfolio in there, we've got you. Okay. But basically, I'm trying to figure out where are we in terms of, okay, this needs to be 100%. Okay, we're good there. And this overlay is coming, or this, oh, it's right here. Okay, I wasn't even on, I was on the wrong layer, guys. Or on the, the top portion was fine. It was actually this portion. So I'm gonna push this over to the left here. I'm gonna reduce, let's see. I'm going to reduce the size of this container from 300 to, let's do 95%. There we go. That's perfect. And all I'm going to do to just realign it to everything else is I'm just going to drag it till I see that alignment bubble right there. Okay. This docking, I'm going to dock it to the left. We have about 4.3%. Perfect. Okay. All right, so now we're looking good. We have 2 finishing touches to do, guys. And it's changing the facing, or changing the way that this shoe is facing. And then actually working on this, this slider. Okay. So first off, I'm going to make sure all these containers don't have a predetermined minimum height, setting all that to none. Okay, our container is the proper size. Minimum height, set that to none. All right. Okay, so we're looking good. So far, so good. Everything is doing well. I do want to make this shoe a little bit bigger. This slider needs to be way bigger. But we haven't done that yet because we actually need to make the slider. Okay, now let's work on this shoe. So when we have it stacked, I don't want it to be facing left. That's weird. It makes it really difficult to actually read. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to actually copy this shoe, and I'm going to do Control-C, Control-D, or Command-D if you're on a Mac. And I am going to left align and top align so that that image of the new shoe is over top of the old shoe. And all I'm going to do is change image. And what I'm going to do, actually, let's see. Instead of change image, I'm going to go to settings. And I'm going to go to adjust. And I am going to do crop resize. And I'm just going to flip horizontally and save. And what Editor X will do is it will save a new asset of this image, just the one that's flipped. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my layers here, and I'm going to call this flipped shoe. Okay, and I'm going to call the regular one, or the original shoe, the original shoe. Perfect. So what I'm going to do is on tablet, I'm going to hide the original shoe. I'm going to go to don't display, and so that we have the flipped shoe. When we go on desktop, we'll have both shoes. And what I need to do is go to my layers, go to the original shoe. This is what we want, but the flipped shoe we actually want to hide. So now when this actually starts to respond, it goes from desktop, shoe is pointing this way. We go to tablet. Hello, shoe? Where are we at? It should be there. Okay, for whatever reason, they both didn't show up. we need the flipped shoe to be there. Okay. And it will stay there all the way down to mobile. Now what I do want to do is I want the shoe to be a little bit bigger on mobile. So I'm going to just go to my inspector, go to my container. We're going to set this to about 60, 75%. All right, that looks good. So now it should scale nicely. Okay. Now this container is a little big. And what I want to do is I'm going to set this minimum height to none. I want it to be the exact height of the shoe and the shadow in it. And I'm going to align this to be in the center. Or actually, let's see. Maybe I'll let you guys decide whether or not we want it to be where we want it to be docked. But I think in the center should be fine. So I'm just going to select center here. Boom, good. Make sure that container is docked to the right. Good. Okay. So we're looking good, boom. If we wanted, you see like this space here, we could add additional spacing or just make it so that this shoe and image are actually on the back edges of this container. Because before it was in the front, we can push it back to the back edge of the container to just give more space. Looking good, looking good, looking good. Okay, so we've got that done. Now we need to do our slider, our interactive slider, which is pretty easy. So this entire container, I'm actually just gonna go ahead and don't display. Actually, we're not gonna do that right now. We want to add another container. So I'm going to click in here. I'm going to right click, quick add. We're going to add a container. And we're going to set this to be about 90%. Now, before I continue, I do want to double check in our session here and look at our chat here. So Yunchin says, this is more of an introductory video to me. I'm pretty sure I have to rewatch YouTube videos when actually having to do it. That's totally fine, my friend. This is totally an introductory video, getting you guys a little bit of a taste of what is possible. And that's what these videos are for. Like, these are for you to rewatch. That's why we had a template for you guys. And there will be more of these sessions. Like, I don't expect you guys to learn all this stuff in one whole thing. This is literally an introductory session for you guys to understand the capabilities of Webflow, or excuse me, of EditorX and Figma. I was trying to say Figma, but I said the wrong word, of Figma in the workflow of EditorX. So guys, like, if you really liked what you guys saw here today and you want to just dig in more without getting overwhelmed, like, growing each and every day, right? Take this as an introductory class. Take the time to ask questions since I'm here, and just show up in our community. You guys can go to editorx.tv to join our community, and we have weekly office hours to dive even more deeper and focus on your specific questions versus workshops like this. Okay, so basically we've made a whole new container, and what I want to do with this is I'm going to add a layouter. So I'm going to go to my plus here. I'm going to go to quick add, and I'm just going to try to find a layouter just like this, and I'm going to attach it to my container. I'm going to stretch it, and I'm going to go to this drop down here, and instead of mosaic, I'm going to switch to slider, or actually slides rather. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to set each slide to have 4 columns, just like this. I'm going to hit apply, and there will be space for each one of my shoes. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to quick add a image here, change image, and I'm going to add our shoes. I'm going to add one, make sure that it actually fits. So I'm going to click this cogwheel, hit reset image so it doesn't crop. Make sure that's centered using my alignment tools, hitting Control or Command D on Mac. pulling this to the next grid cell. I'm going to add our next shoe, so on and so forth. So boom, cogwheel, go to reset image because it's cropped, Control D. I'm just gonna repeat this a couple times. So boom. I'm actually going to crop and edit this. I'm going to flip this. I'm glad this is good content for you to rewatch. Nina says, if you have any questions after, feel free to drop them in the Discord questions channel. Thank you, Nina. You're awesome. All right, so we got that, and okay, pull. So update that. It's cropped, reset image. Boom. And last but not least, Control D. And we'll place this in here. Cogwheel, reset. Perfect. Now, last thing I will do, I want all these shoes to seem flat. So I'm going to just go into my inspector panel after selecting my shoe. Or actually, I don't even have to go to my inspector panel. I have a little rotating icon here. So I'm going to just rotate this till this is about flat. And I'm going to do the same here. Got this little rotating icon, and I'm going to rotate it just like this. Perfect. All right. Now I'm just going to make sure all this is centered horizontally. Perfect. I'm going to remove the background from this layouter. Go to my design tab, turn the background super low. I'm going to go to the container because we also had a background image here. I'm going to reduce that to 0. And now what I can do is I can go to my slider here, the original slider, and I can actually don't display that. Okay. Now our main slider here that we have that's in our layouter, we have these scrolling bars. We don't want that. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my layouter here. So we're in our layouter, we're in our inspector. I'm going to turn off scrolling bars. I'm going to add navigation. I'm going to add arrows. Okay, that means that is going to add two. You guys can't see them, they're super light. They're actually the same color as the background, but they added arrows here. I'm going to select them and I'm going to change the color to our gold. And by the way, if you can't see the arrows, you can always find them in your layers. Okay, so we have our arrows, perfect. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to add a second set of items. So if we take a look at this. So when we created our layouter, what that does is it creates a couple of items here. It creates item 1, item 2, item 3, item 4. It creates 4 items. And so what I've done so far is in our first item list, we have put 4 images of our shoes in one in each grid. What we're going to do is we're actually going to delete the other items. So delete, delete, and delete. For time's sake, all I'm going to do is I'm going to select this item, go to our 3 dots here, and I'm going to, I believe this is it, duplicate. There we go. And so what that does is it's going to take this first item, duplicate it to be the next slide. So if we go back to our layers, we have item 1, item 2, and I'm actually going to rename these. So I'm going to call this slide 1, slide 2. Okay, so we have boom, slide 1, slide 2 are the exact same. So when I preview this really quick, when I click this, when I click the items, or the arrows rather, you can see slide 1 and slide 2 are exactly identical. All right, so I'm going to go back to edit. All I'm going to do here is this layouter, or rather the container that the layouter is within. I'm going to set this to be, the width to be 90%. I think that's what we did. Yep, 90. And minimum height, we're going to set this to none. And minimum height, actually we might set this to 300 because there is a little bit of a and I'll explain why. There's a little bit of a glitch it's not a glitch. It has nothing to do with EditorX. It's based on, if you guys take a look at this, because I've rotated these images, some of the box is actually outside of the container, if you guys see that, right? Here, and I think this is the only one that does it. This is the only image. So what that does is if I actually preview this, oh, it actually doesn't do it. Okay, cool. So we don't have to worry about it. Yesterday, what it was making it do is it was making the making this whole section actually scroll. But I guess it's not doing that this time. Okay. Last thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna just align all this content. And just drag here, make sure that this is aligned with everything. There we go. These I actually want to be on the very, very edge of the container. So I'm just gonna remove, I can remove the margin or literally just right align or left align my arrows. Okay, so everything is looking good. Let me grab this, let me just double check. Layouter. Let me go to my container. All right, so this and this. All right, let me double check this. So now I'm just making sure, aha. So width, we want 90%. Okay, that's looking good. I'm gonna center all this stuff now. So container, make sure that this is centered. Good. All right, just making sure all of my margin is a-okay. All right, let's center this puppy. All right, we've centered it. We pulled out some of the margin, so we're gonna add back our 100 margin here. Good, so all this stuff is lining up now. This is nice. Just doing all my double checks here. Okay, so I'm gonna preview. Also, I don't like this, this little, what is it called, widows. So I'm gonna make sure that this is set to 100%. There we go. All right, now let's see. Boom, boom. It's looking good. All right, we need to fix this slider here when we get to mobile. Well, actually, we don't need to fix it. We just need to don't display the old slider. So we're in tablet. Let me go to my layers. Let's go to, this is the original slider. We're gonna set this to don't display. Okay. We have room for our sliders here. What we could do here as well is we could increase the size of these shoes because they do get a little tiny here. So let's go ahead and set these to about like 85%. 85, 85, and 85. All right, so that's looking good there. We're gonna squeeze. All right, now we're in mobile. And what I'm gonna do here is I want to get rid of the brute forced height here. So I'm gonna set this to none, or auto rather. Let's go to, we have our images. Let's go to our item. Let's go to the layouter. All right, here we're gonna unstretch this. Set the minimum height to none. And now we're just trying to figure out, this is where we can do a couple things. So in the original design here, when we got to mobile, we actually made a whole nother slider. So we had a mobile layouter and a desktop layouter. So what I'm actually gonna do just to make this easier, I'm gonna just Control Z everything that we just did here. I'm gonna leave it here. So I'm gonna call this layouter, I'm gonna call this desktop. And what I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna Control D to duplicate it. I'm gonna call it mobile layouter. I'm gonna center that horizontally and vertically. I'm gonna don't display the desktop. Alex May, is this going to be recorded? Yes, Alex, this is actually going to be recorded and it is going to be on, it's going to be on YouTube for the rest of the time. So you can always refer back to this, but most importantly, you guys, what's most important for you guys here today is understanding just that this is possible. Other than that, what I really recommend you guys do is join our Discord community, because that's where you guys will have access to people who are absolutely excellent at EditorX, but also be able to ask questions, meet the thousands of designers there. We have not only that, but we have design challenges as well. We have one going on this month. The winner producing an EditorX website wins $450. But that aside, most importantly, we have weekly office hours where we go over literally this for a few hours with you guys, so that you understand the platforms and what you're capable of in EditorX a little bit easier. So that's the best piece. Okay, so let's just finish this out. What we're going to do here is, instead of 4 by 1, we're going to do 2 columns. So we're going to set this to, do we want 2 or do we want 1? We'll just do 1. We'll do a 1 by 1. We'll hit apply. And so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to delete these elements here. And I'm only going to have one shoe. I'm going to have one shoe, and I'm going to have it 60%. And I'm going to have it centered. I'm actually going to change the shoe here. We're going to start with this one. Okay, and just like what we did in the beginning, make sure that it's not cropped. Make sure we reset the image. Perfect. Make sure we have it centered. Slide 2. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to delete slide 2, but slide 1, I'm going to click these 3 dots, and I am going to, or rather the ones over here, and I am going to do, looking for duplicate. Here we go, Control D. Okay, so slide 1, we have a secondary slide 1. It's over here now. We're going to call this slide 2. And slide 2 here, we're gonna delete this. We don't need that. Okay. Now for slide 2, it's over here. I'm still learning how to get it into view. Wait, let me see. Oh, nope, that's not it. But all I have to do is click this over here in my layers, go to change image. And sorry about the background noise, guys. It's a leaf blower outside. And I'm gonna select this other image here. Okay, now all I need to do here is let's go to, that's really it. So now we have, everything here looks good. I might increase the size of this just a bit more, maybe like 85. We have our container. I'm gonna set the height to be none so that it collapses to the exact height of our shoe. And I think we are in good position, guys. All right, so now let's take a look. All right, we're looking good. Okay, so let's go ahead and hit preview this. So we have Luxor Shoes, step into luxury. Welcome to Luxor Shoes. We have our shoe on the right with our shadow. We could have a little bit more space here if we wanted. We have a working, all right. We have two of our sliders here. So let's go and work this out. So mobile layouter. We don't need that on desktop, so we're gonna hit don't display. We might also need to do that on, there we go, tablet. We already have it on don't display. Perfect. Okay. Let's go to preview. All right, the slider for desktop is working as needed. All right, we're good. Now we're gonna start to scale down, scale down, scale down. All right, shoe reverts. Our slider's still looking good. If we wanted to change how much space is between each section, we totally could do that as well. Get down to mobile, and we're looking awesome, guys. All right, so our layout here, let's go ahead and see what happened. So we're in mobile. Let's go to our layers. Mobile was turned off. Okay, we're gonna turn that back on. Perfect. Let's go back to preview. and this works. Oh, we need to do the reset here. Let's go back to edit. Select our shoe here. Cogwheel, reset image. Perfect. All right, now let's go. Nice. Awesome, guys. So that's it, ladies and gentlemen. I know this took a little bit longer. This was almost a 2-hour workshop here, but guys, this is just the tip of the iceberg that I wanted to share with you guys. All we need to do to finish this out is go to publish site, and this is test shoe workshop. I can save and continue, and I simply can visit the site. Here we go. This is the live site. We have our slider, and of course, as designers, we can constantly go back in and tweak. Inchun, the noise says magical. There's leaf blowers outside. I apologize. But everything's worked to plan. Nice, responsive, all breakpoints. We have our sliders working perfectly. We probably want to rotate this, but we could spend a little bit more time rotating that. But ladies and gentlemen, this is it. This is our responsive website. By myself or even by yourself, you guys would be able to do this in no time at all. But the fact that I'm explaining things, kind of pausing, answering questions, it requires a little bit more time. But I appreciate your guys' patience, and I'm really excited that we got to do this, guys. I think I do like space between here. I kind of just want to add just a little bit. So if I wanted to do that, very simple. Just go back to our site here, and I'm going to select the container that both our top section container, our bottom section is in, and I'm just going to go to our inspector, and I'm going to add a gap of like 25 pixels or 30. Go back to publish, push those changes. Oh, the leaf blower was so loud he thought it was in your background. Nah, man. You're good. You're fine. You're safe. Okay, so I pushed the changes, so I'm going to go ahead and reset. I think this was this was the old site. The old site I actually restricted the text to just stay here. This is the new one. We totally can restrict this. All right. And this is cut off too. Well, actually, is that cut off? I can't really tell. It is. So I'm just going to go here, refresh or reset the image. There we go. And I can scale this out just a little bit more. Okay. For the text here, I might just set this to 60 or 70. And I can also pull this out just like this. Kind of like the 3 lines. So I'm just going to set this to 100, but at some point I want it to stop. So max width, I'll set it to this, 673. Okay. Let's go ahead and publish. Let's go to the site. And this is how some of the stuff that you might still want to go back and forth. Like here, this looks great, but sometimes I'm just going to set none. This is kind of the troubleshooting you have to play with. All right, so this is no longer cut off, which is good. But this text, I want to make sure stays. Let's just try. So I'm going to set this minimum width, or max width, we'll set it to, maybe we'll set this to max width. I'm kind of just playing around now, just to see what looks best. But last thing, guys, always test to see how it looks on the published site. All right. 70% max 473. All right, here we go. And sometimes the push takes a little bit, guys. Okay, so this is what we have. Boom. Looking good, looking good. And that's it, ladies and gentlemen. That is what we have for today. I think the last thing I probably would want to do is rotate that this last image on mobile in our slider. I don't know how to actually do it because I'm still pretty new to the layouter. But let's see. Let's try to rotate it without looking at it. I guess it has to be in view. So let's rotate it about like 25, negative 25, or like negative 10. Let's try that. Let's publish that. Thank you, Toy. I guess I appreciate that. I'll take that. I'm glad you think I'm a good teacher. That means a lot to me. It's important for me to know that you guys are learning. Okay, so that percentage, there we go. That looks good. All right, guys, that's it. So if you have, this is the scrolling I was talking about earlier, the up and down. So to make sure that doesn't happen, this is just troubleshooting 101. What I'm gonna do. Let's see how I fixed it last time. So let's do. So minimum height. I'm gonna set this to actually have a pixel width or height. I'm gonna set this to be 300. I'm gonna set this for the container actually. Height. We'll set this to 300 or 250. Let's do 200. And then, let's see, Control Z. All right, let's figure this out, guys. So here we have this set to auto. Also set this to auto. And then, okay, slide to. I don't want to leave you guys with the bug that's happened here. I forgot how I fixed it yesterday. So just give me a little second, guys. So height here, let's try 200, which we just tried, but for some reason it is not. Doing the full container, bottom, top. Interesting. Slide 1, what has this got? Let's go to mobile layouter. Let's set this to 200, see what happens. Let's go to the container. Let's set this to auto. Let's see. Let's set this to a specific amount. Let's set this to like 200 for a quick second. Yeah, something odd is happening, guys. I guess for now, what I'm just gonna do, just so that we don't have to deal with this, I'm just going to make the width of this shoe to be a little bit smaller. And for some reason that's not working out. All right, let me see here. Let me just do a quick refresh. Yin-Chen, does it double the time when creating the site? So if I'm by myself, like the first time I did this took me 15 minutes because I'm not talking to anybody, I'm not explaining things to anybody. And I can work, I can listen to music, and we're A-okay. But when I'm explaining things, it does double the time. Let's see. So we're going to center this. Boom, boom. And I'm going to set both of them just to be 50%. All right. Maybe 48%. Okay. So, perfect. All right. Now I can publish this and preview it. And we will not have that that scrolling. The only reason there was the scrolling is because, like I said, that bounding box was outside of the layout container, and it was EditRx was just trying to be a little bit smarter. It was like, hey, you have some content that's outside of the container. We want to show all of it, so we're going to make this thing scrollable. But we didn't want that. So obviously, what you could do is, rather than rotating this image in EditRx, the smart thing would be to just export the image as you want, so you don't fall into this issue. I made design decisions in EditRx, which is not, in my opinion, is not the best. And of course, we have some spacing things that we can fix here. So let's see. All we need to do for that is making sure our container, set this to auto. There we go. And we're gonna add, let's say 40 pixels of spacing. All right, that looks good. Maybe we want to add a little bit more to the top, maybe like 70. All right, preview. That's better spacing. All right, there we go, guys. That is a wrap. We are there. I'm gonna publish it finally. Okay, refresh, make sure everything is in there. We got our sliders. We have our responsive bits. Boom, boom, boom. We got our slider for tablet. Mobile. Easy day. All right. Oh, there's still the scroll. No. What did I do in the last one? There's still the scroll. That's gonna blow me for the rest of the day. All right, I'm gonna try one more thing. All right. So our container, I'm gonna set all of our overflows to hide. I'm gonna go to the mobile layouter. I'm gonna set the, let's see. Minimum height here. Let's set that to none. Or what happens if I set this to 200? I forget. Okay. Let's try again. Let's publish. Let's see what happens. Yeah, teaching is definitely different. Like if I was doing it by myself, we can speed run, but all right, there we go. Okay, I guess that's the fix, guys. So the fix, basically, instead of trying to mess with the shoe, I just increased the height of the whole layouter, or excuse me, the whole container. I gave it a, so this mobile layouter, I gave it a minimum height of 200, so that basically it's bigger than anything in it, so that there's no need to scroll. Because if I go back to, what was it, 130, right? And let's publish this. That second shoe is bigger than the height. So scroll, see? So now it scrolls up and down because there's more, according to EditRx, there's more things to see. We don't want that. So to do that, we go to the mobile layouter, we go to the minimum height, set this puppy to a larger height, publish that. I just want to make sure all the loose ends are tied up for you all. And I'm going to wait a couple seconds. All right, there we go. Scroll. Perfect. There's no scrolling on the shoe. Awesome. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that is it. Okay, thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen, for hanging out today for this workshop. We did a little bit longer than anticipated, but I hope I answered all of your guys' questions. If not, I'm going to take a quick peek through the through the questions real quick. And if you do have questions now, I'm happy to answer them. But yeah, like, we're looking to have more of these sessions to help you guys understand the power of EditorX, how we can be designers, non-technicals, and be able to create something amazing without really having to, like, we dealt with numbers here, but not to a large extent. And if I can do this mess, you guys can do it. And I just want to, share with you all, we're helping people in our community to do this on a weekly, monthly basis with weekly office hours, amazing events just like this, and on top of that, bringing in guest speakers. Just like yesterday, we had Kim Albin talk about XR and AI in the space of design, and really where design is heading in the future. So before I get to your guys' final questions, I also just want to give you guys a final announcement. We do have portfolio reviews with Jason Tantan, an amazing creative director, tomorrow in our community at 2:30 p.m. EST. If you guys go in our community, I'll share my screen one last time. If you guys want to come to that in our event here, if you guys go to our community, link down in the description, our Discord, you guys will see portfolio reviews tomorrow. We already have full seats, so we are not taking any more portfolios, but you guys are welcome to come and see us perform. Or not just perform, but go over everybody's portfolio, and you guys will be able to get some learnings from that as well. So we have it at tomorrow at 2:15, but this is actually going to be at 2:30. Okay. But yeah, definitely join. Check this out in our events section here. You can just go there, make sure that you have hit the interested button so we can see what you guys are interested in. Okay. All right, other than that, guys, I will see you in our Discord. I can't wait for more content like this. And just one last look, I'm taking a peek at the questions. Thanks, Brandon. This is so nice. Now, how to do we make it a live website? Something with a URL. So, Obasi, that is the real website. That's one thing I want you guys to understand. That what I showed you, what we finished, that's the website. I can give you guys the website. So here, I'll share my screen one more time. So guys, what we produce, this is the live site. I can share this with you. I can copy this, boom, I can put it in here. It's the website. So this EditorX is not just designing. We're taking a Figma design, giving it constraints, and outputting it as a real site. This is how we built editorx.tv. It's the same thing. To actually have a URL, how you would do that is you would upgrade. Here, get one free domain for a year, remove the EditorX brand, add and enable online payments. Like, for example, if you have members or whatnot. But this whole thing is basically a premium plan. If you've bought it's just the essentials one here. You can get a custom domain. You can remove the branding, free domain for 1 year, and then also basically just security for your website. So we could do that. I literally could buy luxurshoes.com, upgrade the site, put the custom URL in, but regardless, this site is live. All right. Okay. That's it. But I'm glad you asked, because a lot of people that is a big question. A lot of people do think that, we're just redesigning it in EditorX like it's a design tool. You can design in EditorX if you want, but EditorX is a tool to make websites, live websites. So, awesome. Tanja, excited to use this. I'm glad. The Traveling Dumpling says thank you. Guys, thank you all so much for hanging out. Yeah. I can't wait for more of these. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for hanging out. Again, don't forget to join our Discord down in the link in the description. I will see you guys there to answer your questions and hang out. All right, guys, have a great day, and I will talk soon. Brandon Groce, your favorite designer, host, and promoter, out. Peace.